Welcome to this week's Help Me Rhonda show. Guys, I'm really excited about today because we often talk about sexy brands, right? Brands that know who they are, what they do and how they do it, and how to take and productize their knowledge and help other entrepreneurs. Well, today my guest is no exception. In fact, he is not only an investor in multiple companies, but he's also been a company developer and a business developer and strategist for other companies to scale, to remove themselves from their company so that they can actually start living the life that they are now wanting to or that they just ever dreamed of. And I tell you, so many entrepreneurs, they don't ever know how to do that. So why don't we go right over to the man, Monty Hooke. Welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm happy to be in the blue chair.
I know, you match so nicely.
Thank you.
I love it. It's really, really cool. So on the show, I talk to so many entrepreneurs, but you are an exception to the rule because most of the entrepreneurs that I speak with are either just in their business, they're in it, right? So I know for you, being a business strategist, and you work with a lot of other CEOs and companies, can you take us down the track of what you've done for other companies or what you do for other companies? Yeah. And how have you gotten to the point you are now, having multiple companies running without you, living in Bali and surfing and enjoying yourself going, what's the next deal? Like, what do I want to do next, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably best to start right at the beginning. I had my first business when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And
right.
I guess
you're in Honolulu, right? It's good.
So it's the long history in business and just been doing it for a long time, which is I guess given me the groundwork, laid the foundations that led me to that. But it's certainly not been an overnight thing. It's been a lot of trial and error.
Company? I want to know. What did you do?
I grew up on a boat in Sydney Harbour.
Okay.
Not because we were rich. It was because we were poor. It was kind of like a trailer on water. So I just figured out from a very young age that if I want something more out of this life, man, I got to figure it out myself. So I was cleaning boats in the harbour at 8 years old. In the rowboat, scrubbing the side of the seaweed off the side. Not real, much fun for an 8-year-old, but
But you were making money.
It laid the foundations.
But you were also learning, that kind of the hustle, the entrepreneur hustle.
Yeah.
Was your parents, were they entrepreneurs or business owners?
No, in fact, the opposite. They never encouraged me basically for anything. I was, I love them to death, but they were young. They had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they gave me what I needed to be successful. But really, I just figured it out myself.
So it's kind of in your little DNA. I used to take Kool-Aid. You know what Kool-Aid is?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an American thing, Australia. Yeah. So those packets that were sour, but I would put all the sugar in it, and I would make paper boxes, and I would sell them for 25 cents in like 3rd grade, and all the kids would have like purple slicks in their tongue. Yeah. And I got suspended for like 3 days, but it was awesome. I used to make like $10 a week.
I think that's cool stuff. That's planting the seed for the future, right?
Yeah. All right, so let's get you now where you're at now, because you've developed multiple businesses, but you've done them in a very unique way because you're not face down in these businesses anymore.
Not anymore, no. And look, that's part of the long history of being in business, and it's taken me a long time to figure out that actually I'm definitely the worst person to be in the business. And I think this has been a hard lesson for me, and it's a hard lesson for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, is that when you're in the business, you don't want to give up responsibilities. You don't want to give things up because you like things being done your way and you're used to things being a certain way, and that actually stunts the growth. And it's really just through a lot of trial and error with different businesses, and just learning to trust, like learning to put people in place and just say, look, I'm going to hand this to you. You do it your way, and actually giving people the leeway, I guess, the autonomy to figure it out themselves.
Well, okay, but you said something that's important, because I think this happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm one of them. It took me a while to get to the point where I was able to build teams and trust them, because we do want to do it our own way. But I think more importantly, we almost don't know how to teach someone how to run a division or run a spot. And most entrepreneurs don't think that they have the money to hire someone to do it. Yeah. Let's talk about that, because a lot of people are going, well, I couldn't really hire a team because I don't have the money, so I got to figure it all out myself. But they're burning themselves out.
Exactly. And this is what I call the entrepreneur's bet. And that is, you're going to have to, at some point, bite the bullet and take the bet on paying somebody else. Yeah. And this is the hard part, because you're taking money out of your own pocket. And what happens typically in business is people start making money. They make 100,000 a year, 150 grand a year or whatever, and you can do a lot of that on your own, right? And then you basically build your lifestyle around that money. Yeah. And then if you want to grow it, then all of a sudden you've got to take money out of your pocket, right? And that's the hard part. And that's what I call the entrepreneur's bet, is you've got to take the bet that you're going to take money out of your pocket, give it to somebody else, and it's going to yield you something on the other side of that. And sometimes it does, and there's a lot of figuring out along that way. But if you don't take that bet, then you're just going to stay small.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you say then? An entrepreneurship do, like how do they find the right people, right? Like how do they do that? And then what if you don't know? Like I use the term SOP, right? Standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
What if you actually don't know the standard operating procedure? Yeah. How to hand it off to someone? Do you have to find someone that already understands that area or that division in your company?
Yeah. So what I would say is this: I think where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong with trying to hand things over is trying to hand things over which are things that they don't like, first of all. So example, if you are a small team, and what I say to people is there's nobody to sell the product or the service better than you. As the CEO, the founder, you should be doing that for as long as you can, because nobody can do it as well as you. But this is just one example, but what people try to do is they try to give that away. It's like, okay, well, I'm not the best salesperson in the world, so I'll try to find a salesperson. But typically what is a better approach is the entrepreneur getting their time back, right? So probably the best place to start is a virtual assistant or a personal assistant. Getting your time back so you can focus on nothing but the highest value activities. And the way I explain it is this. I explain it like clearing your plate. So let's say every 3 months you went through a process of just taking 20% of the lowest value activities off your plate, right? If you did that 4 times in a year, well, then you're left with 20% of what you started with at the end of the year, right? You do that year on year, right? If you think of anybody who's done anything big in business, like Richard Branson, that's all they've ever done if you really want to break it down into pieces like that. And that just makes it kind of easy for people to understand, because then it's just this constant process of giving away the lowest value and then only focusing on the high value. Then the idea is do that same thing with your team, right? Because if you can nurture your team to be of high value, then you end up with a high performing team. So that is generally the approach that I take. And it's usually in the first stages of business, like somewhere between kind of 3 and 12 staff, you need people who can be generalists, right? Yeah. Who you can throw stuff at and let them figure out what is their gifts, right? And then let them go through a process of clearing their plate and figuring out what their natural gifts and abilities are. Yeah. And then you end up with people who you find that they are really good in this thing, and then let them own that department.
And they're working there, and they're living within their highest values, and they're working
exactly.
And
that becomes a high performing. That's a culture of high performance.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, because I know that you run one of the largest VA companies as well, and you're kind of removed from that. You've developed it and built it. Did you do it this way? You built it, used the team, and then started the structures of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, when I first started that, well, it was around 2012, and I did everything in the start. Like I figured everything out, but very quickly I put people in place to manage as much as possible. And I went through this process, and even to this day now, I still do some sales, right? Yeah. But yeah, very much that process of giving things away, and it's through that I actually grew the business, because I've been teaching people this kind of methodology, I guess, of how to get your time back to focus on the highest value, and that is the actual thing that helped grow that business.
Well, what I liked the most when you and I first met, because you spoke at my very first, and if I have a clip of it, it's going to be awesome, I'll play it. One of my very first events here in Bali, which was over 5 years ago. Yeah. And your book had just came out, which was the name?
Business Hacker.
Business Hacker, yeah. And it was also, I really wanted you to come because we're also big fans of Tim Ferriss, right? We were part of one of his case studies. So it was quite similar. You're showing people how to leverage other teams, and especially you mainly focus in the Philippine team, right? The Philippine groups. Yes. One thing that I hear often with the entrepreneurs, they're like, I want to use the groups in the VA teams in the Philippines or in other outsourced countries. But what happens is many times they then have to be the ones that actually know more about that division. So you're saying put someone that knows more, but usually the VA, you've got to teach the VA. Yeah. So what if they don't know how to teach them? Where do we go there?
And this is a little bit of a tricky part, because what I say to people who are trying to build a team, trying to scale a business, and they're looking to do part of it offshore. Yeah. What I say is, don't try to give a whole department away, right? So don't try to put your sales department or your whole marketing department and give a responsibility of a department away. You're better off building from the ground up of the lowest value activities and keeping the highest value activities with you and whoever is the key players in the business. Right. And that is the best way to scale. So yeah, when it comes to teaching other people, I think a lot of people struggle with that because they haven't unpacked what they do. Because what we do over the years becomes our unconscious competence, and we don't actually know what we do. Now, if you want to scale a business, you have to deconstruct that. You have to unpack that, create the SOPs as you said, and you've got to give that away in some way. So at some point in the game, you've got to figure out these SOPs and give it away to somebody. So ideal scenario would be if you can bring somebody in to support you, somebody who's like a project manager, high level enough person who can sit with you and go, hey, what do you do? Let me document everything that you do, and then that becomes a potential way of doing it.
I think that's really helpful because I think that's where most people get stuck, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Now, I want to bring in a bit of I call it keeping your finger on the pulse. So yeah, we can do that and pull ourselves out. But being a CEO, I always want my finger on the pulse. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's my control factor, although I want to get your opinion. I have a goal that no matter what, if I want someone else to sell for me, I also have to be selling. It's probably part of my personality. Like I set a goal, no matter what, if I'm not making 2K a day, I don't sleep. So I know what's going on and who's picking up the offers and who's not and what's the right pitches. Is that something that you recommend CEOs and companies still doing? Or do you just say, no, wipe it off and let them figure it out?
No, I agree with you to a certain scale. Okay. And it depends on the business and the size of the business. Yeah. Because there's a limited size that you can get to in terms of being able to do that. And I'm somebody who thinks like you. I like to have my finger on the pulse, and I like to make sure things are still working. And I like the whole Amazon Jeff Bezos thing where they get every staff to do customer service, right? So everybody understands what's happening in the business. And there's also that part of it. And it's me being relatable and humble enough and connected to all the team and all the staff. And I think that's part of it. If I was going to give away all that responsibility, it would be more the case that I'm removing myself as the CEO and I'm putting somebody else in to replace me as that person. And that person I would then expect to be doing what I was doing what you're talking about, having the finger on the pulse. I would be expecting them to do that.
Okay, so putting someone in the place of you, it's like a chess game, almost like, removing that. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Now, where are you going now? Like, this is important because you've built so many businesses, you've removed yourself out, you're kind of like floating over, that business is doing well, that's doing well, that one's doing crap, I'm helping these guys. Like, where do you go from there? Yeah. Like, is that kind of your mojo, is just to build and lift? Or where do you find your sexy brand coming in to play? Like, what is your heartstrings going?
And this is an interesting one for me because, and on the, you're brilliant in personal brands and all this kind of stuff. And I've been a little bit lazy, I'm going to say, on that regard because I haven't needed to. Because I've had the businesses and people like me can hide behind the business, right? Because I'm very good at creating a business and then getting that to work and then moving on to the next thing. So I don't need to do that. There's no identity there. However, what I've come to learn is that has a limited capability of me being able to have an impact in the world. There's some things that I've learned along the way and some things that I'm passionate about that now I feel more called to share with the world. And I can only do that through building my own personal brand. So for me, I love building businesses, but my focus over the last few years has been more on what I would just say sharpening the axe. So that is me being able to achieve more, but by, you would say, doing less. I'm not doing less. It's just that I'm more focused on my health. I'm more focused on my fitness. I train 2.5 hours a day, when there's not a pandemic and I'm not locked down. So I'm super hyper focused on that. And that has actually been one of the things that has helped me to really drill down on what are my gifts, what I should be focused on and not focused on, and help me remove myself from even more things. So the focus for me now is to almost kind of, I feel like I'm starting fresh, right? And I feel like I've got a lot of things to share around peak performance, around this importance of, sharpening the axe and being connected to nature and integrating that into business. Because I feel like, what I've noticed, through this pandemic situation and what's happening in the world is humanity is just disconnected from nature.
Totally.
And, I now feel called to kind of talk about this and integrate this into some of my business and my talk. So I don't think I'm going to move away from building businesses, but I think I'm just going to do them in a slightly different way and me be something of a figurehead for the conversation.
Well, what I like about hearing this though, Monty, is I see this often, right? Many will come in and say, I'm building this brand because that's the business. See, but that's really not the way it should be. It should be, I'm building the brand because I'm so connected to the impact that I want to leave. And yeah, there's money, there's jobs, all that's over here, but why put a brand on it if it's not connected to you? And I think that's the key right there. That's like where the sexiness comes from. It's like you're finally going, wait a minute, I've done all this, but now you care enough to use your knowledge and what you've created and bring it out to the world. And that's really why the brand is at the right point.
And there's also some courage in that. Like this,
you gotta step yourself in.
You gotta step in.
You're used to stepping out.
Exactly, into the bigger version of yourself and put yourself out there in the world. And there's definitely some courage that comes with that.
Yeah, and I can see that though. I think this is development because I tell you, the world needs more people like you that have done it, that aren't, because right now there's so many that are going, look what I've done, maybe for 1 year. Right? And then they're the ones teaching.
Yeah.
But we need guys like you that go, okay, I've done this. I've built, I've lifted, I've built, I've lifted, I've shown teams. Now let me teach you. Like that's what the world deserves to have. And I think that's what's going to happen right now in the day and age. I'm seeing there's a shift in the marketplace, right? Where I'm almost calling it like the oil in vinegar shift because everything's going to hit the heavy. The heavies are going to go down.
Yeah.
And those that rise are the ones that are going to be seen as knowledgeable or have experiences.
And my slant on that is that I think there's probably a lot of people in my situation who see what's happening in the world and now feel called to like speak up and say something, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a movement of that. And I think there is, we've had this movement in the world of personal development and wellness and everybody's a life coach and a business coach. And that's beautiful for the world because that says something about what people are asking for and the direction of the world.
Want to help others.
And I think that's just going to keep expanding. I think there's more opportunities there. But I think people maybe like me who have built brands have got to step into that and have to take a responsibility and not just hide behind the business and go, you know what, I've got to take some accountability for this world that I live in and do something with the platform that I've built.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm really excited I want to talk to you more about Lighthouse, but we're going to close this show because I want to talk more deeply about this because we're doing some big projects here in Bali and it deserves its own show. So guys, what do you think? Think about that. Someone that has done it, has been in the ground, that has not needed to showcase themselves as the brand out front, but they're the ones that are really doing the work. See, that's what I call a sexy brand. They know what they do, they know how they do it, and they do it well, and then it's time to emerge. I want you to think that way. But always, now remember guys, we're going to have another show with another expert, but if I don't say this, the show just wouldn't be the same. If you're going to create a brand, create a sexy brand. And if you're going to be anything, be unstoppable! We'll see you next time. Brand awareness is key in today's modern digital era. And with the rapid growth of social media platforms and the simplicity for all brands to compete on the same playing field, business owners have to start getting creative with how their brand message reaches their clients and customers. Hi, I'm Rhonda Swan, the CEO and founder of the Unstoppable Branding Agency and the Sexy Brand Building Formula programs, where we help our clients create a sexy brand through strategic brand marketing, image, and film. I believe every small business owner deserves to stand out in a sea of marketing messages and make their competition irrelevant with the right brand image, brand message, and strategy. If your brand and marketing is well thought out, but design and images look terrible, no one will take your business seriously. If your design is beautiful, but your marketing message isn't planned out so strategically, it will fall flat on its face. That's where our team comes in. We help our clients restructure their brand image with photo shoots and create a winning combination of strategic brand building through impeccable design and great storytelling through film. The world of business has changed. Because of social media, customers and clients are looking for transparency and connection. A business owner can no longer hide behind a website or rely on their services to attract the perfect client. They want realness, and they want to see the truth behind the brand. As you can tell, we do things differently. And if that excites you, I want to invite you to book a consultation or join us at our upcoming VIP branding retreat and let us help you turn your brand into a sexy, profit-making machine.